Alice Stewart, a Republican strategist, and Robert Reich, professor at Berkeley and author of Saving Capitalism for the Many, Not the Few. I've been wanting to have this conversation because this has been a big issue about free speech on campus and conservative voices being heard. But Mr. Reich, my first question to you is, there's a violence that we saw, this violence we saw at Berkeley, we had it live here on CNN last night. It ultimately does it plays right into the hands of a right-wing white supremacist, someone like Milo Yiannopoulos.
It absolutely does, Don, and I'd want to be very, very clear. I was there for part of last night, and I know what I saw, and those people were not Berkeley students. Those were outsiders, agitators. I've never seen them before. There's rumors that they actually were right-wingers. They were part of a kind of a group that were organized and ready to create the kind of tumult and danger you saw that forced the police to cancel the event. So Donald Trump, when he says Berkeley, doesn't respect free speech rights, that's a complete distortion of the truth. I mean, Berkeley opened its biggest auditorium to this right-wing Breitbart News character, this hateful, odious person, but said free speech is the most important thing we stand for. And these outsiders who caused the police to finally come in and have to cancel it.
Do you think this was a strategy by Yiannopoulos or right-wingers? They put this on so they could, in an effort to show that, there's no free speech on a college campus like UC Berkeley?
I wouldn't bet against it, Don. I saw these people. They were they all looked almost paramilitary. They were not from the campus. I've heard, I don't want to say factually, but I've heard that there was some relationship there between these people and the right wing, and the right wing movement that is affiliated with Breitbart News.
It is interesting because there have been protests, but nothing this violent. We haven't seen anything to this level. Todd, I have to ask you, Berkeley College Republicans posted on the Facebook page, they were writing this, they said the free speech movement is dead. They go on to say that the protesters' success is to defeat for a civilized society and the free exchange of ideas on college campuses across America. I mean, this is where the free speech movement was born in the 1960s at Berkeley. What are your thoughts? Is this a betrayal of that movement?
Well, many of the leaders of the free speech movement who are still among us wrote an open letter to the Daily Californian 2 weeks ago saying, we believe in free speech. This guy is detestable. His views are rancid. And we really believe in free speech. So don't want to show up, don't show up. You want to yell, yell. But this kind of thing that we saw last night, not at all what the free speech movement people have in mind.
Alice, what do you think of what Robert said? Do you think that these could have been paid actors?
Well, I think, with all due respect to Robert, I think it's absurd to think that those on the right had any part in these the violence that ensued last night. And look, I think it's insulting to protesters to call these people protesters. These are violent left-wing vandals is what they are. And they for them to throw things at stores and set fires and mace people wearing Trump hats, that is violence. It's criminal behavior, and it's not protesting in any way, shape, or form.
Let's all agree and let's stipulate this is bad.
Right.
And I also want to stipulate that Berkeley, as a university, opened its doors wide to Yiannopoulos and said, we don't agree with you, some of us, but it doesn't matter. Free speech comes first. Now, when you say, Alice, that these are left-wingers who did this, I don't know that that's true. And you say it's absurd to even surmise that it might be some other group that really wanted to incite to create the impression that there was no free speech and kind of give some substance to claims that free speech doesn't matter. I don't know. I mean, we just simply don't know. I think it jumps to a conclusion on both sides. These were outsiders, I can tell you that, because I was there. I know the students, and I know these people. These people had nothing to do with the campus.
Quick response, Allison, and I want to get Todd in. Go ahead.
You have to give it to Berkeley, as we have stated, the birthplace of the free speech movement, opening up its doors to this speaker, to someone with alternative views to many of those on the campus. You have to hand it to him for that. But also to follow up on what Todd said about the leaders of the free speech movement, and the letter that they wrote, it was also written into an op-ed in the paper. It wasn't necessarily calling attention to the difference in tone of his speech, but they called him out and out a racist, and that is simply not true. What the speech and the context of the speech was not racist comments whatsoever. It was just simply from a right leaning perspective.
You don't think
to put that tone on it
is a racist or makes racist comments?
Absolutely not. Look, I think what he's talking about, a cultural appropriateness, when you adapt different aspects of different cultures and use them as your own, cultural appropriations, that is not racist, but that is the way it has become phrased and looked upon, but that's not racist.
Okay.
And that's the tone of a speech.
Excuse me. Yiannopoulos is a bomb thrower. The folks wearing the balaclavas, therefore we don't see their faces, we don't know who they were, are bomb throwers. They, like Stephen Bannon, have declared total war. If the balaclava wearers, the black bloc, so-called, actually could be taken at face value, they've declared total war on banks and capitalism, and they smashed Starbucks like that's some sort of revolutionary act. Bannon wants to declare total war on Islam. So they are equivalent. Behind the mask is Stephen Bannon.
And that's an extreme comment to make, and I think it's dangerous to be talking like that. Look, behind those masks are violent
it's metaphorical.
people. They're violent people who are trying to shut down free speech, and there's no place for that.
But it's interesting, I have to say, Alice, what
manner.
Robert said. Listen, we don't know. I mean, everyone is assuming that these were students who did not want free speech for someone who is, I hate to even call him far right wing because he's really on the fringe, really out there on the edge. But they didn't check their voter registration cards. I don't know who's been arrested, if it's been in fact proven that they were UC Berkeley students.
Don, can I say something here? Because I think there's a larger context. And that is that Donald Trump, and since the beginning of the Republican primaries, and other Republicans in the primaries are not completely innocent, but Donald Trump has released, has legitimized, has given permission for a certain degree of hatefulness and hate speech in this country, and hate acts in this country that I've never seen before. I mean, people who are, you have Jewish community centers being threatened. You have many more acts, according to the FBI, hate crimes like we've not seen before, particularly against Muslims. What's going on here? I mean, the context of what we are seeing is unacceptable. And to say that Donald Trump has nothing to do with it and Steve Bannon has nothing to do with it is completely it is itself a fact-free comment.
I think Alice deserves a response.
Look, I think it's an easy scapegoat to blame everything like this on Donald Trump, and that's what happens every time we have this type of behavior. But what we see with a lot of this, what we saw with the Women's March here, a lot of people protesting against Donald Trump. Look, a lot of this are people that are just frustrated that they lost the election, and that's their freedom to come out and speak. But what we're seeing there at Berkeley is clearly violent people exercising not the right to speech, but the right or uncalled for violence.
The largest demonstration in American history took place not on the behalf of those who were the minority of the vote, but those who won the majority of the vote. They're not frustrated, they're angry and disgraced and disgusted and embarrassed that this regime of know-nothing, bomb throwers, unreliable, falsehood-speaking clowns are driving America's generations, driving America's history into the dirt. They are angry about that, and why shouldn't they be?
Well, you can call him names, you can call him a clown, but he is the President of the United States. And the people that are out here burning windows and throwing fireworks into a Starbucks store, who was actually part of the left.
They're like him.
That's extremely mistaken.
They're him with bricks in their hands.
Yeah. I've got to go.